Boy, did I miss you. It's a Monday, double victory Monday edition of Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf with you, not in the Everlight Solar Studios today, where Hunter Vaughn, our producer of the show, is per usual. I'm on the road today, baby. I'm in my alma mater, UW Stevens Point, at the 90 FM studios, the largest student-run radio station in the Midwest. They welcomed me back for one day. I was speaking to students today, Hunter. I'm pretty much a big deal, I think, is what we've determined today. Hunter, your thoughts?
You think you're a much bigger deal than you are, but
That's
if you
so
want to
untrue.
be a big deal, then you're a big deal today, Strouf.
No, that's so untrue. But good to be here. Good to be at Stevens Point. It reminded me, Hunter, of driving from Madison to Stevens Point. It reminded me of 3 years ago. When I started part-time and I was still a student here, I would make those long drives, but well, not that long, 90-minute drive back after like a Friday night high school football game. So very reminiscent drive this morning, but nonetheless, good to be with you on this Monday. Excited for the show today. Jam-packed show today. Jake Kocorowski of BadgerExtra in the Wisconsin State Journal going to join me. 12 games, a full regular season in the books for Luke Fickell. Ends on a high note. The Badgers finish the regular season 7-5 as they await their bowl destination. So we'll talk with Jake Kocorowski about that. We'll also talk with Jake probably a little bit about the biggest return in sports this weekend. CM Punk back in the WWE. Got to pick Jake's brain on that as well. But that's all later. Everybody knows what I'm here to talk about on a Monday. And what I'm here to talk about is an ass kicking on Thanksgiving. A Thanksgiving game that I was entirely wrong about. Entirely. We spent 3 hours, Colin Russo and I did, as well as Jason Wilde for an hour in there. We spent 3 hours Thanksgiving morning telling you how this was going to go south, and how the Packers were going to lose, and how maybe it looked better than the September Thursday night game these two teams played on a Thursday morning in November. And boy, was I wrong, and boy, am I glad to be wrong. The Pack is back, baby. Now 5-6, winners again this week over the Detroit Lions. And the story remains the story. The story is Jordan Love looks the part again. 3 weeks in a row now. Really 4 if you want to count that Rams game. But Steelers last week against the Chargers, now this past week against the Detroit Lions. Jordan Love looks the part. And that's bananas to me, because I don't think this is the storyline we're saying a month ago, or maybe 5 weeks ago. We thought Jordan Love was just kind of He was just kind of meh. And that was okay, because it's a transition year. You have young receivers, you have young skill players around you. You thought, meh, it might be kind of a weird year. It ain't looking that way anymore. Jordan Love looks the part. 3 touchdowns again, no interceptions on Thursday against the Lions. Jordan Love might be the real deal. And again, I'm not telling you to get him fitted for a golden jacket like I might do with Jaden Reed here in a second. But with Jordan Love, stacking success has been very, very important for him, and something he hasn't done a ton of. And Jordan Love now, for the 3rd, if not 4th week in a row, has stacked success and looked the part and looked better. Now, this game was weird because it's hard to put a ton of stock into, given that it was such a big first quarter. Opening possession, 3 passes and a touchdown for Jordan Love. Second possession, same thing pretty much. Longer drive, but touchdown. And then a defensive touchdown in the first quarter. So it was just kind of out of hand early. It was 23-6 at halftime. Final was 29-22. So it's hard to put a ton of stock into a full 4 quarters, but on the same token, that is the first game we've seen for the Packers where all 4 quarters looked really good. And sure, they allow 16 points in the second half, but you're really playing prevent at that point. You're just trying not to give up the lead. And the Packers didn't. And that game was never really felt like it was in jeopardy. It felt like from pretty much drive 1, the Packers were in control. Now, I know the Lions responded with their first offensive possession of the game, but they missed the extra point. So it was all Packers all day on Thursday, and it was the best start to Thanksgiving that there could have been. I think I tweeted before the game, all right, time to find out if I'm going to be happy or sad to be with my family today. Boy, was I happy. Packers looked phenomenal. Jordan Love looks the part. Christian Watson, by the way, a guy that got a lot of flack over the course of the last couple of weeks. Christian Watson looked really good. 5 catches, 94 yards, and a tutter on 7 targets for him against the Lions. Malik Heath, the second leading receiver. Jaden Reed looked awesome again with a touchdown. Tucker Kraft scoring his first touchdown in the NFL. So a lot of really big positives to take away from that Lions victory on Thursday. But none bigger than what I pointed out last week after the win over the Chargers. And that is that I understand the plan now. I understand what Brian Gutekunst was doing when he moved to this youth movement, which I was critical of, but I can't be critical of it anymore because it makes sense. And the dude is a GM in the NFL and one that's highly respected for a reason. This plan is working, and it might be working faster than he anticipated. I don't think the Packers planned on being a playoff team in 2023, but as a matter of fact, they just might be. They just might be a playoff team in 2023. 5-6. That graphic I talked about last week popped back up last night on Sunday Night Football. In the hunt. First team there is the Green Bay Packers. And boy, do they have a big one coming up on Sunday against, debatably, if not the best team in the AFC, the best team in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, at Lambeau Field. This is a team that is outperforming the expectations. Let me say that again. This is a team that is outperforming the expectations we had for them. Now, our expectations have changed a whole hell of a lot over the course of the last 2.5 months, 3 months. Because going into the season, I expected this team through 11 games would probably be like 4-7. We're at 5-6, a game better than I expected. But also after that first week against Chicago, you might be thinking that's a team that could be 7-4. So yeah, the expectations have changed a lot. We started really high with the Chicago Bears game in week 1, and then we came back to earth. And we realized, okay, there's some growing pains here. This might take some time. And it does. But the last 3 weeks have proven to you, despite the 2-1 record, the last 3 weeks have proven to you that this plan is working. This team isn't as bad defensively as maybe they were a year ago. This team is better offensively than you expected them to be 5 weeks ago. But also, I might make the argument this is a better team offensively than they saw a year ago, an 8-9 Green Bay Packers team that fell 1 game short of the playoffs, losing to guess who? The Detroit Lions. Aaron Jones didn't play on Thursday. Luke Musgrave didn't play on Thursday. And that was a world-class ass-kicking by the Green Bay Packers from start to finish. So, yeah, I'm a little jacked up on this Monday. I still don't know if this is a playoff team. I really want it to be. And I know they're not winning Super Bowls. But this is becoming a team that is getting hot at the right time. And I know that's an old cliche and an annoying cliche. But this is a team that's getting hot at the right time. And to see them beat, who, by the way, last Wednesday I called a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the Detroit Lions. The way they beat a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the Detroit Lions, yeah, I'm a little fired up. I'm not making any predictions about Sunday yet against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. I think it'll be more difficult than what we saw on Thursday, but I'm not making any predictions yet because this is a team that's young and hungry, and now they're starting to click offensively. Something to keep an eye on. I'm pretty fired up about the Green Bay Packers and their plan that is coming to fruition here after their Week 12 win over the Detroit Lions. Speaking of Week 12, the Wisconsin Badgers regular season now in the books. They get a big win on Saturday against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. First time since 2020, the Axe comes back home to Wisconsin, now leading the all-time series, by the way, as well. A final in that one, 28-14. The Badgers throwing a shutout in the second half. Game was tied at halftime. All Badgers in the second half. It's another, similarly to the Nebraska game a week before, it's another show of toughness and grittiness and grinding it out that Luke Fickell has preached since the day he arrived in Madison. And that's come to fruition later in the season. 2 really bad losses this year, though. I still stand by those Indiana and Northwestern losses are 2 of the, if not the 2 worst losses, other than maybe like Buffalo and Georgia Southern, you could have had on the schedule this year. Bad losses, inexcusable. But the Badgers figured it out at the end of the season. They got the bowl eligibility for the 22nd year in a row by beating Nebraska in a come-from-behind, overtime, hectic senior day fashion last week. They go to Minnesota, and the defense steps up in the second half, and so does the offense. Braylon Allen had probably his best game of the season. I don't know statistically if it was, but 26 carries is what you do with a guy like Braylon Allen. You lather him up, and it pays off. 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, including that first third quarter touchdown, which gave the Badgers the lead that they never gave back. So overall, it's a winning weekend, and you got to be pretty fired up about this Wisconsin team and the direction in which they're headed. I under conversation we'll have with Jake Kocorowski when he joins us in a few minutes is, do you view 7-5 as a success in year one under Luke Fickell? I think it's fine. I wouldn't call it an utter failure. I don't know that I'd call it a success either, though. Luke Fickell, when he arrived in Madison, preached competing for a Big Ten title in year one. He preached competing for a national championship every year. 7-5 ain't that. And this was a year in which a 7-5 record looks pretty bad. And it goes back to those losses I just brought up in Northwestern and Indiana. You look at the schedules in the years coming up, the next 2 years, those are 7-5 schedules for a Wisconsin team. 2023 wasn't, but 2023 was also a year riddled with injuries, riddled with new players and new schemes and implementing different things that maybe hadn't been here in the past. So I'm not making excuses, because 7-5 ain't a success, but it's better than maybe what it looked like after a loss to Indiana or Northwestern, finishing the season with 2 wins over Nebraska and Minnesota. And the Axe is obviously an important one, right? It is the deepest rivalry. It is the longest running rivalry in college football. And to get the series lead, to get the Axe back for the first time in 3 years, those are all moral victories that I think just make you feel good. And I'm not a huge moral victory guy, but for a 7-5 season that was probably a little bit underwhelming given the hype around the program entering this college football season, to end it on a high note certainly is something. And they'll have a bowl game. We'll see which one at 7-5 to hopefully take that over the top, make it 8-6, and give you good feelies as you already start thinking about a week 3 matchup against Alabama next year. All right, plenty to get into with Jake Kocorowski of BadgerExtra in the Wisconsin State Journal coming up next. But first, I got to tell you about my friends from Door County Distillery, Jake Kocorowski, CM Punk, the Badgers, Luke Fickell, all of it coming up next. It's Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf.
As always, our featured conversation on Mr. Relevant today.
Is Jake good to go? I forgot to tell you to get my hair.
At Door County Distillery, locally produced, handcrafted, and award-winning spirits made locally.
Perfect. He's probably watching.
The holiday weekend has come to a close, and oh boy, do we put a damage on the cherry brandy for the old fashions on Thursday. Had a little bit of bourbon as well on Saturday night with the family. Love my friends at Door County Distillery and everything they do. They do it better than anybody else. You better check out their website. Door County Distillery.
59. We're doing great.
Find the retailer nearest you, as well as a huge list of unique cocktail recipes. That's on their website, doorcountydistillery.com. Just pop in your zip code. It'll tell you what's near you. And again, they've got like hundreds of unique cocktail recipes, which we also feature in the Sippin' with Strouf series. You can find it on the ESPN Madison YouTube page. I'm making up all sorts of cocktails every month just because I love Door County Distillery. You should too, doorcountydistillery.com. Let's chat with our buddy, Jake Kocorowski.
The thing I love about doing this show is I'm always scheming, right? Like, who's a guy or a gal I would love to talk to about this? Badger season, regular season in the books, 7-5 record, year one of Luke Fickell. CM Punk returns to the WWE. Nobody better to talk to than Jake Kocorowski of BadgerExtra in the Wisconsin State Journal. What's up, my man? How are you?
Not much, man. Doing well. Hope you all had a good holiday. And, I just got back from a workout. So, it's one of those things where I got to work off all the food I ate, which included a full pizza, admittedly, after the Wisconsin-Minnesota game, after getting all the post-game stuff. I didn't do that in college. Never did that in college. I had 2 roommates that would eat, they're part of the marching band, would eat pizzas at the UW marching band, would eat pizzas, a full Jack's pizza, one of those, cheap pizzas that were at the, before their marching band practice at 6 a.m. And now I am nearly 40, like scarfing down an entire medium Domino's pizza after writing and getting video. So very much trying to work it off before my 40th birthday, my friend. But thanks for having me on.
Of course, anytime. Always love catching up with you. So hold on, we need to talk about that before we dive into everything else. So I was going to ask, what size was the pizza? Medium Domino's. How many toppings did we have on it?
I mean, I had, what was it? It was barbecue chicken, so barbecue chicken pizza.
Oh.
I love black olives. Went with that. pretty basic. We were just trying to get back to the hotel. We tried going to a Chipotle on the Minnesota campus, and we were there for about 10 minutes and we didn't move. We're like, all right, let's go just right across the street to the Domino's, and we got it within 10 minutes. So shout out to that Domino's for feeding the Wisconsin State Journal BadgerExtra staff in our time of quote unquote need. So
yeah, quote unquote. No, that's awesome. And you're I'm sure you're ready to be done traveling for a couple weeks, because you've done that obviously all season long with 12 games in the books. Now you got a couple weeks off until a bowl game, so that'll be nice at least, I assume, huh?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's not, my boys, shout out to my twins, Logan, Samuel, like all three of our boys have birthdays coming up in the next 10 days. My twins are, so Saturday, instead of going to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game, I actually get to spend their birthday with them, which is cool. Shout out to my boys, happy early birthday. And then our oldest 5 days later turns 12. So it's, it's a busy household. So even though it's busy, not necessarily for work as much, even though the early signing period coverage will be coming up for BadgerExtra in the State Journal starting on the 20th of December, we're still busy with family stuff, and my budget, man, is already broke. I'll just be flat out honest with you.
Well, no, that's the holidays. I feel you on that one. Trust me. And by the way, I might as well just throw in a plug for my birthday on December 7th as well, if you want to get me anything, Jake.
That's the same birthday. That's the same birthday as Z, man. So I'll make sure I get you a birthday text, man.
Good. Pearl Harbor Day. Good day to be associated with. Anyway, all right, let's pivot. 12 games in the book for the Wisconsin Badgers, 7-5 record. They get the win over Minnesota. They beat Nebraska in epic fashion last week to kind of right the ship after two really bad losses to Indiana and Northwestern. I was kind of just riffing on this before you hopped on, Jake, and I don't really know my answer. But if I told you 7-5 3 months ago, would we view that as a success in year one of the Luke Fickell era? Because I feel like our expectations were very, very high.
I mean, from the outside, I think even from within the program, I think they were higher, right? I think if you said 7-5 the day before the season opener against Buffalo, I think many would be disappointed. I mean, they're picked in the preseason poll by Cleveland.com to win the Big Ten West. Though that may have been a slight margin of victory in a preseason poll, but you had a lot of hype, right? The new era of Wisconsin football, all the graphics, you're seeing progress on the field, the new offense that would modernize the Wisconsin offense. You had, and then the defense. Mike Tressel had a lot of success at Cincinnati with their version. I think it was the 3-3-5, even though they didn't really see a 3-3-5 within Wisconsin this season. But so you had a lot of success. That obviously college football playoff for Cincinnati and Luke Fickell back in the 2021 campaign. And then on top of that, so that's just what was coming in, and also a recruiting staff that knew how to recruit, especially at Cincinnati. And so that part, the recruiting parts, lived up to that. Where right now, as of today, Wisconsin's a top 25 program for the 2024 class, according to the three major recruiting outlets. That's a major plus. Rivals has 10 of the 21 scholarship commits as 4-star recruits. That's people talk about the blue chip ratio. Which is like basically if you have 4 stars or higher for 50% of your recruits, that's kind of the blue chip ratio. I think that's used by multiple recruiting outlets. Mm-hmm. I mean, Wisconsin, according to Rivals, has that. But, it's also on paper talking about recruiting, the 2019 to 2021 classes, between those three classes were among the best in the recruiting rankings era. And so on paper, it looked like they had talent. There is talent, and there is talent on this program for sure. And you bring in the transfers and everything. So yeah, I would say expectations were higher. And even Luke Fickell talked about this and admitted, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, that the adversity that he faced, in his first season at Wisconsin, verbatim said much more difficult, compared to that first season in Cincinnati when he went 4-8 in 2017. So, you come in, early loss to Washington State, where 3 early turnovers in the first half will do that. You have, on top of that, just the losses to Iowa, the injuries. I don't think if you would say 7-5 with the injury, you're going to be without your starting quarterback for X amount of games. One of your 2 starting running backs will be gone after the 4th game. Your other starting running back will once again deal with injuries because he's going to be needed to be the rock of the offense.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, I can see it, especially at quarterback, where even though bringing in 3 transfers, and more one goes down, well, there's a lot of inexperience with that group. But I think overall, I think a lot of people were expecting in the final year of the Big Ten West to Wisconsin to claim that throne and go out before it gets much, much tougher starting in the 2024 season with four former Pac-12 teams coming into the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant answer, Jake, and you're spot on. I mean, you look at the Big Ten West; it wasn't very good. Iowa, obviously, 10-2, but I think that was what was circled, right? Get to Indianapolis the first weekend of December, and then we're probably calling it a success. And obviously, there's inexcusable losses in there, despite. And I laid out some of the things you just did. They're fair excuses. I don't think you ever plan, especially in the Big Ten West, Jake, for your two workhorse backs to miss time each, one of which most of the season. So they're fair excuses, but it still makes you think, okay, what does next year look like? Because that's a 7-5 schedule, whereas this year was not a 7-5 schedule. 2024 with Alabama and who else is on there? USC and who am I missing? Penn State is in there. Oregon's in there, right? I mean that is a 7-5, 8-4 schedule, at least as things stand right now. But we know, if we've learned anything about Luke Fickell, and obviously you've spent a lot more time with him, he's going to go out and recruit. He's going to go and try to get transfers. He's going to try to elevate this team to a Alabama, Penn State level in 1 year. Is that doable? I don't know, but he's certainly going to try, which continues, and I will continue to say, he is the right guy for the job. It was just a rough year.
Right. And it's also one thing too, where you look at the offense and maybe they're just, they're still working through. And I think Saturday, you saw just how explosive that offense could be against Purdue. You saw how explosive that offense could be. So you saw flashes of the potential. And we, and during spring ball and in the preseason camp, it's one thing with us reporters too, seeing what we saw. You're seeing explosive plays, and obviously you're going against another, your own teammates. So maybe that's skewed those results there, but our thoughts, about leading into the season. But they do have coming back. Will Pauline's emerged as a go-to receiver, especially on third down. He's right now. I mean, he's in. He could possibly, depending on how many catches he could tie or break, the single season mark in school history for receptions. I forgot how many he has right now, but you also have that. I think it would take a lot, to be honest with you, but he's among, it's one of the best single season, single season marks for a Badger receiver in quite a while. But you also
66 of them, Jake, 66.
Yeah. So you need 13 to pass. So I don't know if he'll get there, but it's still among the best. And so you have that, and you have the pieces are there for Wisconsin, I think. And, I do think this offense, you needed to modernize the offense. And I don't think an air raid scheme by itself in terms of the passing game, you need a rushing attack. And I think Wisconsin will continue to have a rushing attack. You take a look at the three running backs in the 2024 class that are coming in. Two of them are ranked four-star recruits. And then they have a third one that's should be a high 3-star recruit too. And they realize that there needs to be a power running game, and Phil Longo's utilized the power running game at North Carolina, and whatnot. So I think for the passing attack, the air raid, I think they'll continue to improve, and we'll see just, how the quarterback situation shakes out, starting, in the spring with spring ball. But, I think there's still a lot to like on offense, on defense too. I think you've seen, the emergence of Ricardo Hallman, and Hunter Roller, obviously. So those are two big time players. James Thompson Jr., started off the season really well. And you're seeing guys, some younger players. I'm really high on Christian Allegro, the true freshman, who started to get more reps on defense towards the end of the year and was kind of using like third down type situations from what I saw. But, he's a lengthy type of inside linebacker that could be the prototype of the future. And those are the guys that, I think fans should be excited about, and outside linebackers too, Darrell Peterson, among others too. So it's, in my eyes, this is going to be, there's still a lot of good pieces for Wisconsin. The schedule's going to get tougher, but I think there still should be, the optimism. It's going to get tougher, but this is what, in terms, especially with recruiting, you have Mabry Matoyer, the 4-star recruit coming in.
Yeah.
who's going to be an early enrollee. There's going to be a bunch of players that are enrolling early. Kyan Barry Johnson, who's slated to be a slot receiver. I watched him live a couple months ago, and he looks the part of a wide receiver with great hands and ability there. So there's a lot to like, and I think they'll continue to. They've already made marks in the 2025 class with getting I believe Remington Moss, who's a cousin once removed of the late Brent Moss, the former legendary Badgers running back, who I think he's rated a 4-star recruit by On3. But you also have Landon Locke, the younger brother of Braden Locke, the other quarterback. And you have Michael Roski, which you're talking about. A lot of people are worried about with recruiting the in-state recruits, and trying to keep the border, if you will. Locking up Michael Roski, who's a high 3-star offensive lineman from Wautoma, who you watch his film, a lot of pancakes, a lot of energy. I mean, and he's a ball of clay, basically, for where he's at. And he could be really good in my eyes, and probably, the type of, obviously you talk about a prototypical Wisconsin lineman. He's only a junior in high school, but I think he could fit the mold of that if he develops the way that they hope he will.
I love it. Nobody knows recruiting better than Jake Kocorowski. So I love that you run us through that and get us ready. What's that?
You're too sweet.
I'm right though. How many people, Jake, can rattle off what you just rattled off? Not many. I'll tell you that much. Not many. If any.
I can tell you, like, my coworkers get mad at me where they're like, Jake, what are you doing? Like, I'm like texting, like, hey man, you should see this. And they're like, well, what are you doing? Like, it's 12:30 at night, Jake. I'm like, my mind's just, no, I'm just joking. It's just one of those things that, I mean, that's part of the thing I do at the State Journal and Badger Extra. I'm part of the tag team with Colton Bartholomew. I know you talk about CM Punk earlier. I mean, he's like the Dax Harwood to my Cash Wheeler in terms of for the
there we go.
FPR. So it's but yeah, one emphasis of mine on the beat is to cover the recruiting stuff, and we're gonna have a lot more stuff coming up. Next month for the early signing period. But, there's a lot to like with what this new staff's done. But I think, this is going back to what we've talked about, it's just, were the expectations too high? Possibly, because you never know.
Probably.
I mean, Luke Fickell, Luke talked about it, right? Where he was asked about lessons learned during his first regular season that, he's like, you're always learning. And I think that's one thing that, even for me as a beat writer, will be one thing too, is like, could have all the things on paper that look good and initial indications, but until they take a field against an opponent, a quality opponent, then, maybe halt the expectations and see just what they do, on the field, against another team.
Yeah, you saw it early this year against Washington State. You'll see it early again next year against Alabama. So that'll give you a good gauge early on where that team's at. And it did this year. And 7-5 is maybe disappointing as it is. To end the season the way they did, still impressive in my eyes, Jake. Now, how shocked were you that you heard an ESFU chant in Minnesota on Saturday? Because I didn't know that traveled with the Badgers fans.
No, all of a sudden we heard it, and I looked at Colton. I go, and Jim Polzina, our great columnist, and I'm like, did you guys just? Yeah, that was that was the student section chant that. When I was a student at UW, I mean, that was part of the experience. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, even walking on pregame, like I was down on the field, and shout out to the Minnesota staff for allowing us on the field, pregame, postgame. But there was a lot of red in that stadium. There was a lot of Badger red, Cardinal red. And you saw it, like, obviously you have your parents and they're up in the second level, but you saw, I mean, that stadium was not filled up in Minneapolis. Like, we're
Really?
looking like at game time, and it looked half full. I'm sure it was like 60-65% full. It probably got to about 70-75% full, but like, even just, you could see the noticeable seats missing out of that game. So I don't know if that's a reflection of just Minnesota fans in general with the way the season's gone. They came in 5-6. They got trounced by, Ohio State the week prior. It's holiday weekend, etc. But yeah, I mean, even, I took video of it at the end of the game where, you're hearing "Let's Go Badgers," and it was loud inside Huntington Bank Stadium as they're closing out the 28-14 win. And you're right. They should, I think the way Wisconsin rebounded after that loss against Northwestern, where you're, hearing Tanner Mordecai saying, we want to see, basically talking about like he's looking for players who have the give a expletive deleted factor to them. They showed up against Nebraska, a gutsy overtime win where there was plenty of flaws. No doubt, especially against the defense. With the defense, that allowed 2 early touchdowns, but they came back for an overtime win. And then you go and the Minnesota game, yeah, they give up the early touchdown, but the second and third quarters, I meant to get the stat up. I apologize for not finding it, but they had outgained Minnesota. It was over 300 yards to probably, I think, like 100. It was over 100, but they had outgained them. It was, they outscored them 28-7 in that point in those two quarters. So it's for Wisconsin, it's really what they did, against Minnesota. I think it should be commendable because they came out, they won the trophy. The seniors who are departing the program will now have that ability to state that they reclaimed the axe. And, now they're also once again ahead in the all-time series, 63, 62, and 8.
I love it. Yeah, atmosphere looked awesome, even for being a road game, especially after the game. And I loved the moment of all the seniors and Braylon Allen swinging the axe. It's just cool. Now, were you more surprised by ESFU at Huntington Bank Stadium, or were you more surprised by CM Punk showing up at Survivor Series War Game? I got to talk to you about this.
No, it's all good. No, we should. Yeah, I mean, I was more surprised. I mean, I'm writing inside the press box, trying to get out, and all of a sudden, I look, and I'm like, I see, like, I look, my attention span's that of a gnat sometimes, and so I quickly look on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. It's not X, it's Twitter.
I am too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still Twitter to me. It always will be. But you look at CM Punk and it's like, oh, why is he trending? Oh, and your eyes just, it's good for wrestling in general to have someone like him. I remember, so this is going to be way back, but when I was almost 22 years ago, went to a Mid-America wrestling show in the Milwaukee area. I think it was in Muskego. And I watched a very young CM Punk take on Colt Cabana, and I think it was a 2 out of 3 falls match. And I caught a picture. I had one of those. Okay, talk about a whole old. There's no phone like this anymore, right? I'm talking about an old school, like one of those digital 1 hour photo ones where you flip real quick, the instant cameras. And I took a photo that I kept. I forgot. I don't have it anymore. But he looked. I mean, talk about a straight heel. Looked straight at me and gave me a glare, and I had that in my photo album for years because he was a straight heel. I mean, he was perfect heel. He had Dave Prazak with him as a manager, and for those in the wrestling business who know Dave Prazak, he's been within the business for years. So yeah, it is I think it's good. It's sad to me because in AEW, I think I'm a big AEW guy. I love the wrestling. I was always a little big WCW guy before it went down, before it became really bad in terms of storylines and whatnot too, when I was a kid. But, you do, I think it's good for WWE. I do wish it could have worked out in AEW because I think with everything that happened, I still feel, and obviously I'm not one I don't have all the reports. I don't know. This is extremely the outside looking in, but I would have loved to see the Elite and Punk make money off of what happened and put differences aside. Yeah. But then again, I don't know exactly what happened. You don't know what happened. You don't know feelings. You don't know exactly what transpired. And, even though there have been very, I would say like detailed reports, but you just don't know, and you don't know what people's feelings are. But you also feel like, man, that could have been a good feud, and you could have seen him feud with others within, that could have been really good for the promotion. And it is what it is. And now, Triple H pulls off a huge surprise, and now you have a whole new set of feuds and storylines that are added to that product too. But AEW's got some great stuff going on too. So it's whatever, it's good for the business to see so many wrestlers getting work, and I think it's only helps.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I know you, as you just mentioned, right, also like an indie wrestling fan, as am I. And it's just cool to see, number one, that part of it, everybody getting work. But number two, this is the most excited I've been about WWE in a long time. You have a guy like Cody Rhodes return a couple of years ago. Now you have CM Punk. You have Seth Rollins going crazy, and I think it's a work, but we don't know. The lines are blurred again. So there's just so much excitement around this for me. And I was at a buddy's house watching it after a few beverages, and we all thought it was over. Randy Orton returns, and obviously he's a legend himself. And then all of a sudden the music hits, Cult of Personality, and you're like, oh man, there it is. They did it. I didn't think they were going to do it. So I was very excited, Jake, and I wanted to talk to you about that. Well, enjoy your couple of weeks without traveling, my friend. We'll have to do this again soon. Appreciate you taking the time and laying your expertise down for us.
Oh, absolutely. No. And like I said, we're going to have plenty more stuff coming out. I'm working on a project in the next couple of weeks. I'm not entirely laying low. We got a special project. I'll tease it a little bit. I won't give too much more other than it's a special video project that we've been working on since May. that we hope to have done by the end of the month. And we'll be able to unveil it to everybody. And it's about a 30th anniversary or something. So that's all I'm going to say for now. But also, we're going to have great early signing period coverage at BadgerExtra and the Wisconsin State Journal. Like, I'm excited. I'm starting the planning meeting, the planning meeting out, this week sometime. And it's going to be, this is, the season doesn't end, and we're going to know about where Wisconsin goes, by 6 days from now. We're going to know, so there's going to be tons more coverage there. Plus on top of that, women's volleyball, one of the number one seeds. We're going to have coverage there.
Pretty good.
Men's, women's hockey, basketball, both men's and women's. The season never ends, man. Like, sports never ends. That's what's great about it. And we're here to deliver it for y'all, courtesy of BadgerExtra.
BadgerExtra, Wisconsin State Journal. They do awesome work over there, and we love working with Jake Kocorowski and his team whenever we get the chance. Jake, I look forward to watching the Badgers in the Jimmy Kimmel Jake Kocorowski Bowl.
That'd be fantastic.
We should get a bowl named after you. I think we can pull that off. We probably have the bankroll between the two of us.
That'll work. Get some sponsors. To see how much good karma can help sponsor that, man. I'll have my people call your people.
Yeah, there we go. We'll work on it on the side. Jake Kocorowski, he's the best. We'll wrap it up coming up next with what Strouf learned. It's Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf.
All right, as we talked about earlier, the Packers good all of a sudden. Didn't see that one coming. 5-6, 8th place in the NFC. Big one coming up Sunday night. It's Green Bay Game Day live from Green Bay beginning at 4 o'clock. I'll be joined by Tori Lowe, Kyle Wallace, Jason Wilde, Rob Domofsky will all join me from the beautiful Tundra Trio houses in the shadow of Lambeau Field. You can listen to Green Bay Game Day. Get ready for Kansas City, Green Bay this Sunday beginning at 4 o'clock on 620 WTMJ, 94.5 ESPN Milwaukee, and 100.5 ESPN in Madison. You're not going to want to miss it. Mahomes loved the rematch of his first start from a couple of years ago. I've got a ton of juice for this one following the Packers win on Thursday night. So make sure you join the party. It's Green Bay Game Day beginning at 4 o'clock this Sunday from the shadow of Lambeau Field. Again, those stations, 94.5 ESPN Milwaukee, 100.5 ESPN Madison, and the Powerhouse 620 WTMJ for Green Bay Game Day.
All right, thanks again to Jake Kocorowski for joining us. Always good insight, even some wrestling insight there at the end with Jake. Always good catching up with him, and I mean it when I say it. I mean, what they do over at BadgerExtra is terrific. I think they're coming up on 2 years of starting that brand, and it's awesome. So if you're not already, make sure you check them out and follow Jake on Twitter at Jake Coco, not to be confused with Conan O'Brien, Koco. All right, so what I learned, you learn something new every day. I learned something new over the weekend, and it's actually kind of disappointing. I don't like Black Friday shopping anymore, is what I learned. I used to go every year. I worked every year. I've mentioned in the past, I worked at Lids when I was in high school, so I worked it early, Thanksgiving night into Black Friday. And I actually enjoyed the chaos because I'm one that enjoys chaos. I went Black Friday shopping on Friday afternoon. I waited out the morning crowds with a buddy of mine. And, we popped over to the normals, right? Best Buy, you hit the mall in Green Bay because I was home for the weekend. Man, it sucks. Parking sucks. People suck. The chaos sucks. You always have like the awkward interactions because I was in my hometown where you like run into somebody you haven't seen in 10 years and you're not even fully sure what their first name is. I had that interaction at a Best Buy. So it's just awkward. And now today, probably the better day. Cyber Monday, obviously local Saturday as well. Hope you got out and supported local a little bit. But Cyber Monday, definitely the route I'm going to go going forward. Black Friday stinks. Hunter Vaughn, your thoughts on Black Friday before we wrap up?
I worked in retail, so Black Friday is the worst. I hate it. Retail's the reason why.
So you didn't like Black Friday? You didn't like Black Friday while working in retail? Because I actually kind of enjoyed the chaos.
No, because I don't know what it was like for Lids, but I worked at a Verizon store. So
yeah, then that's
because
just a pain.
of so many people trying to activate devices, nothing ever worked well. I'd have to sit on hold for a half hour with our internal customer support while I've got mom and dad mad at me because the iPad won't work. And I'm just like, I hate this. I have to be there from 4 a.m. until like 10 p.m. It was just the worst. It was exhausting. I hate every bit of it, and like I get anxious just thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we feel the same way these days because yeah, it made me anxious walking through Bay Park Square Mall. I didn't even go down the wing that Lids is located in because I did not want to go near Build-A-Bear Workshop or Lids, which are right next to each other in Bay Park Square in Green Bay. So, anyway, all right, my statewide tour continues. I'll be back in Madison Wednesday for Wednesday's edition. So look forward to seeing you in Madison, Hunter. I've been in pretty much every city in the state, it feels like, over the course of the last couple of days. Green Bay, Manitowoc, Stevens Point. I was back in Madison last night. Now back up to Stevens Point, back down to Madison tonight. So the statewide tour continues. A lot of windshield time, a lot of deep thought, and that's where my take that I officially dislike Black Friday came through. I wonder if I'll ever come back around like the Green Bay Packers have. If like maybe I'll take a couple years off and then I'll go back to Black Friday shopping and be like, hey, actually this kind of rocks. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll get deeper into the Packers Wednesday, as I have a lot more thoughts from that Thursday game, but also leading into Sunday. Sunday is so much bigger than I anticipated Sunday being 3 weeks ago. Sunday is a huge game for Jordan Love, is a huge game for this Packers team, who will likely still be beat up. And I still think they'll probably lose, but I think you can learn a lot of things about the Packers in Sunday night's game against the Chiefs. So I'm really looking forward to that. We'll dive deeper into that coming up on Wednesday's edition. Reminder, if you're watching us live, get the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Mr. Irrelevant. It'll pop right up. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure you can watch us live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, back to Fridays, after a couple weeks off at 12:15 p.m. We'll do a conversation every day, as well as some of the commentary on all things Wisconsin sports. All right, that does it for us today. Big thanks to Jay Kocorowski and Hunter Vaughn. As always, this has been Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf. We'll talk to you Wednesday. Peace.